quick's than swift.
Well, from 2 defeats in their opening 2 games to 3 wins in a row, Australia, the 5-time champions, I suppose they are back. This is Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricinfo Match Day. I'm joined in studio by Cheteshwar Pujara and Shane Bond. And I guess, guys, that is as comprehensive as it gets.
I think before the game, they wouldn't have thought of this. Yeah. This is probably the biggest win of this World Cup. So I don't think Australia would have thought about this. I mean, they definitely wanted to win with big margin. But before the game, they would have never thought about such a big win.
Yeah, you couldn't get a bigger win. I think everything went to plan for Australia today. All their batsmen got in the runs. They got a big score on the board. The Dutch have sort of found themselves at 80 for 6 throughout the tournament. But then they come up against a team that's got that experience and that firepower. And it was always going to be tough to convert another poor start into a big score. And I think in the end, Australia just showed their class. And again, I've never seen Australia lose to a smaller country, and they showed why.
Yeah, absolutely dominant. So let's just recap what took place in today's match. Australia, they decided to bat first, and they had big hundreds coming in important places. Glenn Maxwell with the fastest World Cup 100 that came in 40 balls. He ended on 106. And then David Warner, a second consecutive century at this World Cup. It just was not to be for the Dutch. I mean, they were bowled out in 21 overs. Look at that. Adam Zampa, 4 for 8. It's his third 4-for in 3 games. He's also leading the wicket charts now at 13. When you look at that scorecard, Puji, I mean, besides seeing an obvious massive gulf between the two teams, what else catches your eye?
Well, the Netherlands batting, I still feel that is something which they will always want to improve on. They are never having a good start, and that is something which they would definitely want to work on, because if they want to be, be a little more competitive, that is something which they need to work on. Apart from that, I think it was a perfect day for Australia. I don't think they need to think about anything else. They wanted some of their batters to get runs. Steve Smith got runs, Marnus Labuschagne got runs. Maxwell, the way he batted, I think everything is going in favour of Australia. I think they are having a proper comeback, and they have some easier games going forward. So I think they are almost there for the semi-finals.
Yeah, just before we turn to their bowling performance, let's just recap what they did with the bat, Australia, because David Warner, we know he's in pretty good form now with those 200s, but Glenn Maxwell and the middle order was a slight concern. Now, would you say, on the back of Maxwell's century, they might think, okay, actually, things are clicking?
A little bit. I mean, Maxie can be a little bit hit and miss, and he offered a chance up at 28 today against a good team if that's taken and fixed thing. Cameron Green came in, didn't really get going. Obviously, there's an injury concern about Stoinis and his bowling. So there's still an area of exploitation for other teams if they can chip through the Australians. How their balance is effective if Travis Head comes back in is a big one, with Marsh to 3 and then Smith at a position that he doesn't really like at 4. So it's not perfect, but they're still playing good enough cricket, and they still have enough match winners that they're going to make life tough for whoever they face if they make the semi-finals, which, given their draw, they probably should make now.
Yeah, we're going to have a look at their remaining fixtures towards the end of our show, but just to conclude on their batting then, both Stephen Smith and Marnus Labuschagne scoring half-centuries today. They're in a bit of a tussle for a spot in the team, and I guess Marnus, maybe, despite his runs, it was 62 in the end, he might drop out.
I think he will, because I don't think they are looking at dropping Steve Smith out of that team. I think that is not happening for sure. And I don't think they are competing for that spot. I think Steve Smith is there. Since he has got this runs, I don't think there's any doubt about him being in the playing 11. So it'll be a little unfortunate for Marnus to miss out in the next game, unless they think of, Travis Head instead of Cameron Green. That'll be a big change. But apart from that, I don't think anyone else missing out apart from Marnus Labuschagne. So it'll be a bit harsh, but the positive part is he's scoring his runs. He's doing his job. So does Steve Smith. I think he's back in form. So things are good as far as Australian batting lineup is concerned. And even whoever misses out, I think it's a good thing to have, because if someone gets injured, you know that everyone is in form.
Yeah, and then things are also looking pretty good from a bowling perspective. So the opposition aside, if we can, to have Mitchell Starc take a wicket early on, given that that's been a concern through the tournament, how good would that have been?
Look, it's always nice to get wickets. I wouldn't read too much into it. I almost expected him to take wickets today. The quality of bowler he is. He got a hat-trick in the warm-up game against the Dutch, so it doesn't surprise me he got a wicket. again, you see the effectiveness of a leg spin bowler at the back end of the innings. We saw that with Kuldeep against New Zealand, and again, Adam Zampa can come in against that middle to lower order, and he can create all sorts of havoc. So that's the one plus for Australia. He's now top of the leaderboard, bowling very, very well. And they didn't. I mean, again, Stoinis, the bowler of Stoinis, Mitch Marsh. There's still a little bit of concern around that. Cameron Green didn't get a bowl today, so Australia. I mean, they're a class outfit. So they'll be happy.
Yeah, let's zone in a little bit on Adam Zampa. So first of all, he's had a wonderful day because the joint record that he held with Mick Lewis, knocked for 113
yes,
in ODIs, has been overtaken. Buster leader 2 for 115, which is, I'm sure, something he won't want to his name. But Zampa, he had a slow start to the tournament, and now he's taken 3 fourthers in a row. Have you seen anything that he's doing differently?
I think he's more accurate with his line and length. I think he's not bowling as many loose balls as he used to start of this tournament. I mean, being a leg spinner, you are always bound to end up bowling some loose balls, but he has a bit more control now, and his line is much better. So is his length. And you know, many teams are struggling to pick his googlies, which is his strength, and he's continued to, you know, carrying on from there. His googlies are turning a bit more even on a flat pitch, because Delhi pitch we saw that there wasn't a lot of assistance for spinners, but his googlies were still turning enough to, you know, to trouble the batters.
Yeah, a lot of players we say are confidence players, and the better they do, I suppose, the better they feel about themselves. Do you think Zampa's that kind of guy?
I think that's every type of player, to be fair. I think if you look, say, let's compare him to the Pakistani bowlers. He's not getting cut. He's a difficult man to cut with the trajectory bowls, and he's not offering up step hits. He's not getting hit back over his head. He's not getting driven through cover with over-pitched balls. For 2 years now, he's been super accurate. He just holds that length. He spins the ball in and out, and he asks the batsman to play good shots against him. And that's the last 3 games has been the Adam Zampa we've seen for 2 years. And it's no surprise to me he's getting a lot of wickets, because when he bowls like that, he's one of the best in the world.
One of the criticisms of Australia when they selected their squad was that they've only gone with the one spinner. They've left Ashton Agar out. Now that Zampa's in such good form, does it still feel like a criticism?
I think that's one area perhaps they miss a little bit of Travis Head as well. Glenn Maxwell's a more than capable off spinner. I think his record's really good. And now Travis Head will just give him that option to come in as a second off spinner. I'm not expecting to see Steve Smith to bowl, but just to have the option of another off spinner will help them. And I think Australia, like at the end of the day, I think Australia will feel they're going to win the tournament on the back of those 3 fast bowlers and Adam Zampa. They've got 4 world-class bowlers there, and Maxwell's a nice complement to those bowlers.
And now Australia will take a lot of confidence. I mean, we're talking about the Dutch, and we'll have a look at their batting, but 309 runs is a pretty ginormous margin to beat a team in, and considering how they're stacking up the results, how confident will they be going into the next fixtures?
You're talking about the Netherlands?
No, Australia.
No, Australia. Australia. Look, they will be confident, but they will also understand that this victory was against Netherlands. So I don't think they'll be overconfident. That is a team which understands what is at stake. So I feel they are a balanced team. They know what has gone right, what they need to work on, and I don't think there are many areas they need to work on apart from getting the right playing 11, because I know it's a big headache and it's a good headache, but at the end of the day you are still, you know, leaving a player out, and how you communicate, you know, how you still have the right atmosphere in the team is more important, and that is something I think they should be working on.
Yeah, so we just saw on screen there Australia's remaining fixtures, and the first one I think is close to your heart.
It is.
It's in Dharamshala against New Zealand. That's a crunch game for both teams.
Massive game. I think Australia have outplayed New Zealand in the last games in white ball cricket, but if you look at the table, New Zealand 4-1, Australia 3-2. If New Zealand win that game, it almost guarantees semi-final qualification, creates a gap between the top 3 and the rest of the table. If Australia win that game, New Zealand come back at the bunch, and you'd expect Australia's net run rate to climb, given that they're playing Bangladesh and Afghanistan games. You'd expect them to win. So all of a sudden New Zealand fall probably into a game against India, perhaps in a semi-final, but also under pressure from teams coming up below. So that game on Saturday is a massive one for both teams.
Yeah, we see Australia there now in 4th place on the points table, 6 points and a positive net run rate. Did they come into this game with a negative one? They might have, hey?
It was down by quite a bit, so it shows a 300-run win. I mean, there's a little bit of work to do, because the more games you play, the harder it is to bump that run rate up. But you look at New Zealand, they've got to play Pakistan, South Africa, and they've also got Sri Lanka left after Australia, so they've got really tough games to come. and you think that, you know, one of those teams play each other, all of a sudden it doesn't take too much to climb up that ladder.
And if you look there on the points table, we also see that it's made things a little bit more complicated now for Pakistan and Afghanistan, Puji. They're going to need to do something special.
They will have to, and Afghanistan is playing well, but the way Pakistan is playing, I don't think they'll make it to the semi-finals because they don't look like they are performing to their potential. I think their batting lineup is not, they are not batting well. If you look at their seamers, they are struggling. Their spinners, which should be their strength, but they are not bowling well. And the middle phase, I think between 10 to 40 overs, that's where I think Pakistan is losing games. So I don't think Afghanistan and Pakistan have a very big chance. Afghanistan still might have, because the way they are playing, they have beaten Pakistan. You never know, they might cause another upset. But yeah, I don't think them qualifying for the semi-finals.
Yeah, and speaking of Afghanistan, they caused the 2 upsets, but the Netherlands, they were responsible for the other one. That was against South Africa. 90 all out certainly does not look like a team that put 245 on the board and then defended it so well. They spoke about making the semi-finals. It now seems like a little bit of a flimsy kind of statement. I don't think that's in the possibilities anymore. What do they have to do now? Because they're here. They've got to still play for 2.5 weeks.
Look, I think they'll take that same mentality into the games coming up. I think making the semi-finals is never going to be realistic. And I think if you look at the Dutch team, they lacked batsmen in particular who are playing, you know, a level of even first-class cricket consistently and playing quality bowling day in, day out. And that when you come into a tournament like this where you're facing the best players in the world, it's just been highlighted. Now, they've been, as I said, 6 for 60, 80 for 6 in a number of games, and they've managed to drag their way out because of the real fighting spirit they have. But ultimately, if you find yourself at 80 for 6, you're going to consistently get bowled out for 120, 130 and not be competitive. So, yeah, they've just got to find more players and get them playing consistent, better cricket at a high level.
Okay, so that definitely cannot happen overnight.
It's not going to happen overnight, unfortunately. Yeah.
And it feels very harsh, you know, 90 all out, everybody's done the wrong thing. But can we just zone in a little bit on the opening pair, Vikramjit Singh and Max O'Dowd? It's been a really tough tournament for them, and this comes on the back of a qualification tournament in Zimbabwe where both of them looked pretty good. They were aggressive up front, taking the bowlers on. Now they look a bit reticent. Vikramjit Singh's playing sometimes silly shots, I suppose we can say. I mean, what's happened there, do you think, Puji?
I think it's also the pressure. I think when you're playing in a World Cup tournament like this, I feel, you know, there are many people looking at them. So because they don't have the experience, it becomes slightly difficult to handle such situation. But I always feel as a batsman, you know, you have to, you can only get better by playing matches, and they still have an opportunity to perform well. So yeah, there are times where things are not going your way, but if you still have an opportunity to make things better, and that's what I think the Netherlands team should be looking to do, because they have an opportunity to compete. I think there are times where, you know, you have to be honest, there are times where you know that you can't qualify for the semis, but each and every game, if you can be competitive, then it's a big positive for them.
So is it about small markers now?
Definitely. I mean, they play Bangladesh, I think, next,
yep,
and that'll be a real target for them if they can knock them off. And maybe one of their targets is we don't want to finish at the bottom of the table. We want to see how high we can actually finish. And you know, they have played consistent cricket. They've pushed a lot of the teams well. They've got some games they can still win and be competitive. But yeah, there's some other stuff that sits in the background that is going to have to occur in order for them to continually move up the rankings.
Yeah, they've also got a team, a middle order who are quite an age, so Colin Ackerman, Sabran Dingelbracht, Roelof van der Merwe. These are guys who we may not see at a World Cup again, and I suppose they would want to start to think about where they're going to get the next group of batters from. And it is not just for them. I think there are many teams who fall under that category where they are looking to build the team for the next World Cup. And how they do it, it is always really interesting because you need to have the right system. We have spoken enough about that in the show, that if you don't have the right system, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Bangladesh, they are struggling to perform in the World Cup. So for the next World Cup, I'm sure even Netherlands will have to look at their team and then try and build players around that. Yeah, and I think you've both, just to close off, been part of teams that have won big. I don't know if either of you are part of a team that won by 309 runs, but you probably have at some point. But just give our viewers a little insight. What does it feel like when you've been bowled out for 90 and now you've got to go look at each other and you've got to try and internalize this and wake up tomorrow morning?
Yeah, I've been played in series where I remember playing Sri Lanka, we got bowled out for 68, I think, in a one-day game and turned around and won the next day. Because once that game is done, it's done. The opposition they play next time for the Netherlands is Bangladesh. It's very different in terms of the quality of the bowling attack, and all you can do is keep reflecting on the stuff that they're doing well. What are we doing well? What do we need to carry on in the next game against Bangladesh? And if we bring that same mindset they have for the rest of the tournament and they're up for it, then they can win. I mean, they've already beaten South Africa, which seems ridiculous when you think about it. So there is no reason why they can't go on now and have a couple of wins. It just comes down to putting a much better performance than they did today on the board.
And I can talk a bit more about that because not in one-day format, but we have been in a situation where we were bowled out for 36 against Australia.
That's
and
right, yeah.
And you know, the first thing we spoke about is it was one of the day where things didn't go our way. The quicker we forget about it, the better it is for our next game. And you know, we left that game as early as possible. Like in our thoughts, we as a collective, as a team, we decided that we are not going to speak about it anymore because that is done. That is something which we can't control. And that is not something which you want to analyze because it was a bad day. You just accept it and move on. The quicker you move on, the better it is.
So you guys didn't talk about it at all? It was like we were bowled out for 36, we're not addressing this.
I don't think there's almost any point. It's that bad that it's just you've just got to park it under the bus. You know, there's days where you just nick everything, it just goes your way. Or sometimes it's like fielding. There are just days where you just drop everything. And I think every team will have that. Australia have had that. Doesn't make them a bad fielding team. I think we all know Australia much better than that. It's different when it seems to be Pakistan who are doing it every game. Yeah. But Australia just had a bad day and it just happened. So when you're flogged and bowled out for 90, all you can say is, well, they were just too good on the day. We've had a stinking day. Time to move on. Yeah,
and I mean, 36 is basically a third of 90, so that didn't haunt you. I mean, not to harp on about it, but it didn't haunt you. It didn't. I mean, if I was Scott Edwards right now, what would you say to me?
Well, I would just say that try and focus on the next game because you know that you are beaten now. There's nothing which you can do about it because the more you reflect, I think you are talking about the negative stuff because there hasn't been anything which has gone their way apart from their feeling today. So as a team, you just need to think about your future, the next games, and that is something which you can control. So I would just say try and control the controllables rather than reflecting on what has gone wrong.
Okay, so Scott Edwards and the Dutch, you move on from this and move on fast, and that's coming from a man who was part of a team that was bowled out for 36. So good advice to take. And Australia, they're back. They've registered a huge win here at the World Cup. Remember, you can catch up on all the scores, the news, the analysis, and the views by downloading the ESPN Cricinfo app. We'll have all sorts of match reaction from today and all the games at this World Cup. Thanks for joining us here on Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricinfo Match Day, and we'll be back with more soon.
Stunning looks, then swift,